Hi, everyone. Sorry to keep you waiting. Okay, hi. Good evening. Good morning. Good afternoon. Okay, all right. So I got my mic uh, working. Wow, it's 2 a.m. in the morning in UK. Well, thank you for joining me so late or so early in the morning. Um, okay, so all right. So today we're going to talk about the past and present predictions of war in Taiwan. In the aftermath of the Chinese spy balloons. In the past year or so, I've seen a lot of people predicting the timing of a military confrontation between the US and China over Taiwan. And I've been following them. And for the most part, I do not disagree with them, or I agree with them. But the recent Chinese spy balloon has made me think, and I think I have a different perspective now. And I want to share that with you. I think it's time that we reevaluate the risk of war in Taiwan because there's a hidden factor that has been ignored. Even for people like me who follow CCP politics, I didn't really think that the CCP internal infighting could really play that big of a role in determining the direction of the geopolitics, right, in the Pacific. But I think it's time that we need to give more weight to that factor in our consideration or analysis. So today we'll first review the different expert views or predictions of the timing of war in Taiwan, and then I'll offer my perspective. And after that, at the very last, I want to talk about a Tang Dynasty prophecy book that predicted the Taiwan-China conflict. The reason I'm not someone who follows prophecy and use that in my work, and I only talk about it when it has affected the Chinese people, because during the Lunar New Year, a lot of Chinese, particularly Taiwanese, have been or what we're talking about that particular prophecy because they're concerned. So it's Saturday, so even I know a lot of you don't. We're not superstitious, but it's Saturday, so let's just enjoy it from a cultural perspective, if not a geopolitical perspective. But I think you'll find it interesting. So let's first take a look at the overview. So there have been various predictions of a Sino-US war over Taiwan, and some say the war is imminent. And in March 2021, the former commander of the U.S. Navy Indo-Pacific Command, Admiral Philip Davidson, he testified before the U.S. Senate and China. He said before the U.S. Senate that China plans to have a capability to invade Taiwan in the next 6 years. So that was 2021. So that will bring us to 2027. So the 2027 deadline has been widely referenced and has been called the Davidson window. And a few weeks ago, at the end of January, the head of Air Mobility Command in the U.S. Air Force, General Mike Minihan, said in a memo, he said, "I hope I'm wrong. My gut tells me we will fight in 2025. He gave the 2024 Taiwan election and the U.S. general election as the reason and said the United States presidential election in 2024 will offer Xi Jinping a distracted America. And he said, quote, Xi's team, reason, and opportunity are all aligned for 2025. Now, Taiwan's Vice President Lai Ching-te is a strong supporter of Taiwan's independence. And he recently took over the chairmanship of his party, the DPP, and he will run for president in 2024. So another military officer, former Deputy Undersecretary of the U.S. Navy, Seth Cropsey, also said that if Lai wins the 2024 election in Taiwan, Beijing could move quickly to invade. Now, there are also those who don't believe Beijing is ready to launch a war. For example, Australia's former Deputy Prime Minister Barnaby Joyce argued that a major conflict between China and Taiwan is unlikely because he said, this is his quote, he said, "I think it's unlikely that China and Taiwan will come into conflict. It's too stupid, and they're not stupid. China will instead try to assert its power incrementally." Mr. Joyce wrote, the quote is from an article he wrote in the Australian newspaper called The Australian. And former Australian Prime Minister Kevin Rudd, he's recognized as one of the world's most knowledgeable Western leaders about China. He has worked and studied in both Beijing and Taiwan. And he believes that the most likely time for a Chinese invasion of Taiwan is after 2030. His reasoning is that China will have to modernize the PLA and reach economic and financial independence from the West first. So scholars and experts argue that Xi is aware that a forceful takeover of Taiwan could cause backfire. And the Diplomat magazine even had an article that listed 10 reasons why Xi Jinping will not attack Taiwan anytime soon. And basically, it's very detailed, but to summarize, those who believe that he will not attack Taiwan in the near future, primarily based, they give three reasons. The first is wars are expensive and the Chinese economy isn't doing well. And the threat of economic sanctions could paralyze the Chinese economy completely. And the second reason is Taiwan is armed to teeth. The United States, which will be engaged in the confrontation, is much superior in military capability. And then there's Taiwan, the Quad. And also Beijing will be isolated from the international community. And the third reason is the PLA is still lacking personnel, experience, and preparation. So those are pretty much the three reasons that people gave. Now, I've found that the person who kind of explained it very well is no other than the Undersecretary of Defense for Policy, Colin Carr. He said this in exclusive interview with the Defense News podcast on January 31st. Now, January 31st was the day after the Chinese balloon has already entered the U.S. space, but it's before, I think, it became major news. He basically said, I don't see anything that indicates that this thing is imminent in the next couple of years. And I'm going to play his video because I think he explained it very well. It's only 3 minutes, so let me play that. I hope you can hear the audio. Here we go. Can you hear? Oh, there's no sound. That's really weird. Huh? Oh, here we go.
My view, I don't see anything.
Can you guys hear? I cannot hear anything. Tell me if you guys can hear it. Do you hear any audio? Nope. No audio? Steven says you can. You can hear it? Okay, good. I cannot hear. So it's okay. You guys, I'll just play it. Okay, hold on. Let me play it. Sorry. I'll play it for you.
My view, I don't see anything that indicates that this thing is imminent in the next couple of years, and I'll tell you why. The PRC has been going through a breathtaking military modernization, and like I said, a lot of that modernization is oriented against countering the United States, especially our ability to project power into the first island chain in defense of our allies and partners. Obviously, they are trying to build the capability to coerce Taiwan. You saw elements of that in reaction to the Speaker Pelosi visit last year. They are investing in capabilities that might at some point enable an amphibious invasion of Taiwan. But all of that said, I see nothing that indicates that Xi Jinping believes his military is ready to do this. Nothing. I think that they understand well that the United States continues to have pretty significant overmatch in a lot of critical domains, and that Xi Jinping would, all else being equal, like to resolve the Taiwan issue without having to resort to force, because he has, especially after having seen, the Russian experience in Ukraine. I mean, on paper, the Russians looked like the second best military in the world when they invaded Ukraine. They didn't look like that the day after they invaded Ukraine. They certainly don't look like that now. And, the PRC has not fought a war since the 1970s. And the last time they fought, it didn't go so well. And nobody has fought the type of war that people are kind of wargaming around think tanks in Washington. So, it's kind of like saying you got the two teams in the preseason that look like they should be in the Super Bowl, except one team has never played a single game, and the other team has been playing season after season after season for decades. So I don't think the PRC leadership, assesses that this is possible, and I'm not sure that they've made any decision about whether it's even desirable. So I think what we need to be mindful of is our deterrent capability is meaningful and real right now. But what the NDS says is that there's an imperative to sustain that edge and to strengthen it over time. And we are committed to doing that so that every single day our adversaries wake up and say, today is not the day. And that's true tomorrow and the day after that and the day after that and the day after that. So we are committed, and I think we can put a lot more time on the clock. And in the interim, we owe it to the American people to not seek a conflict or confrontation, because it's not in our interest to have it either. It's not in the world's interest to have it. Nobody is seeking a confrontation with the PRC or anybody else. Our posture is to defend our allies and partners and to deter aggression. We do not want a conflict. The good news is I do not think a conflict is imminent unless we kind of stumble into one, and we will be very mindful to not let that happen.
Okay, so all right, so let me come back. I think he said it very well. I think his view is probably shared by many people, and I would agree with him. I would agree with his assessment up until a week ago. The balloon incident has given me a different perspective, and because his assessment is valid. Is only valid with the underlying assumption that Xi Jinping is the decision maker, right? So he will decide if he wants to attack Taiwan for a military confrontation with the U.S. But that assessment is based on the assumption that he has a fairly good control of the PLA or the party. But with what happened in the balloon incident, I realized that whether or not a war will break out in the Pacific, in the Taiwan Strait, between the U.S. and China concerning Taiwan, may not be a function of Xi Jinping's feeling confident or the PLA being ready. It might be a function of how Xi Jinping reacts to internal political turmoil and how his political enemy will trick him into a military confrontation with the U.S. involuntarily. So let's talk about what I've learned from the balloon incident. In my program last Saturday, I concluded that Xi Jinping did not send the balloon by design. I analyzed the several scenarios in which the spy balloons were sent by either his political enemy within the party or as a result of a command chain meltdown. At a briefing on Thursday, the U.S. government echoed this view. CNN reported that Washington believes that the balloon is part of a CCP's surveillance program, but Xi Jinping may not be aware of it. I think Xi Jinping is aware of the existence of such a surveillance program, but he doesn't know when the balloons will be sent and and the exact functions of the balloons and also their ramification. So the lack of coordination within the CCP is a sign of its internal political turmoil or meltdown. And I'm afraid that we're going to see more of that. So concerning CCP's military confrontation with the United States over Taiwan, Xi Jinping's opposition within the CCP has become a critical factor in determining if or how the regime will initiate such an operation. In the past, I held the view that Xi Jinping was still pretty much in control despite ugly political infighting, but now I think his control has been greatly reduced. Now, let's talk about his opposition. His opposition includes two major forces, and I think both two forces will play an important role. The first is his political enemies, and the second is the disconnected CCP apparatus. Okay, so let's talk about the political enemies. It's mostly the Jiang Zemin faction, right now spearheaded by Zheng Qinghong. But there may be more people who oppose Xi Jinping joining this faction because there's just a lot of unhappy officials, right, at different levels who may join this faction. So they may gain, they might have gained some, gained more support. And the second force is the broken CCP system comprised of lower-ranking CCP officials and technocrats whose lack of action, enthusiasm, and work performance is working against the system or working against the regime and Xi Jinping's wishes. By the way, the CCP is laying off government employees, cutting their pay, and also changing their employment status from like full-time to contractor. So there are a lot of unhappy CCP officials at the grassroots level. So if these people stop their work, the CCP machine, the apparatus, is going to fall apart or be dysfunctional. So let's use an analogy. Let's say if CCP is like a running train, right? And Xi Jinping is the conductor. He's fighting with two forces while trying to drive the train. The first group of people try to kick him off of the train, right? His political enemies are trying to take control of the train and is fighting with him violently. And the second force is that he's concerned about is the various broken pieces on the train that are falling off. And you don't know when a certain piece will fly away and cause major damage or causing an accident for the train, or you don't know what will happen to the train, right? And also these fly away pieces might land in an international community without control, causing a disastrous diplomatic tension. So just like the balloon incident. So of course, Xi Jinping is fighting with his team. He's fighting to remain control. But we couldn't really say what's going to happen to this train. I mean, before this incident, we could only observe from the outside, and you can tell that this train is not running normally. But we couldn't tell what's happening inside the train, right? Because it's not transparent to us. But now with this incident, I think we could pretty much know that things are not going well inside the train because the train is running wild and has behaved dangerously. So now the Jiang Zemin faction has always wanted Xi Jinping to start a war against Taiwan, and so that he would fail. It has been scheming this for a number of years now. I made several videos on that topic, and you can check out the video titled The Connection Between the CCP's Factional Politics and the Taiwan War. I think it's from 2022. I made it last year. That's the title, The Connection Between the CCP's Factional Politics and the Taiwan War. It explains why his political enemy wants him to start a war, but he's very careful trying to avoid that. I'll provide the link after this program. So, I always say that Xi Jinping has been walking the fine line between using Taiwan as an excuse to justify his holding on to power and being very careful not to accidentally starting a war. So he's just trying to, balance the two. But his political enemy, the Jiang faction, wants him to start a war and fail. So he doesn't want to start the war. So the assessment the video that you've seen from the Undersecretary of Defense, his assessment is correct. That is what Xi Jinping thinks. But I think that the political infighting is getting really ugly and out of control now. I say this because on Friday, which was yesterday, the United States shot down an unknown object over Alaska, right? It sounds like the White House didn't say it's another balloon, but it says an unknown object, in high altitude. And then today, just I think an hour ago, maybe 2 hours ago, the Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau confirmed that he had ordered an unknown object in high altitude in over northern Canada to be shot down. So we have 2 more balloons being shot down within 2 days, over North America. Now, if you think about it, it's been over a week now since the balloon crisis became public. So the question is, how could the Chinese still be launching balloons or objects, right, to America? So, I don't think these balloons were launched like a while ago and they can't control it. And they just accidentally flew over to Canada now. I don't think so. I mean, it looks like they were launched after this whole crisis became public. So who did that, right? So we can only have 2 answers. One is Xi Jinping's internal enemy is going all out against him and is being relentless, and they're still launching these balloons to embarrass him. Or the second reason is his internal command system has entirely become chaotic and dysfunctional. It's like a total chaos. They can't control whatever. The same mistake is being repeated over and over again. Or it can be a combination of 2, meaning that at first could be a technical oversight, and then somebody found that it's a good opportunity to use. They took advantage of the situation to embarrass Xi Jinping, right? So I don't know will we see a third object somewhere else? I mean, it will be unthinkable. But think about what happened, right, on that train. So you might ask, why? What are they fighting, right? Jiang Zemin has died. What are they fighting? Do Xi Jinping's political enemies want to be in power? Not necessarily. In the early days, their factional war might have been over political power. But nowadays, with Jiang Zemin's death and with the ways China is going, and the fact that Xi Jinping has, obtained a 3rd term and he might even get a 4th term, right? I think the fight is more over protecting their wealth. Xi Jinping is coming after these people's wealth in the name of anti-corruption or self-revolution. Remember, he is using the term self-revolution to cut arms and right. He used some very severe terms. He's determined to get rid of all the organisms within CCP that he believes is corrupting the system. So the Gen people felt that they need to bring Xi Jinping down to protect their family wealth or the wealth of their children. They're not necessarily interested uh, in gaining power. Their whole objective is to bring Xi Jinping down. Are they interested in a good Sino-US relations? I do not think so. Are they interested in the well-beings of the Chinese people or the future of China? I do not think so. And it's very dangerous. So, and these people could be very disruptive. So the big question is, will Xi Jinping be cornered into a position that he will involuntarily create situations that will cause strong reactions from the United States, or situations that that will force him into some kind of that will be, that he will be cornered into a situation that a military confrontation becomes inevitable. Well, we don't know, but like I said, Xi Jinping is very risk averse and will certainly be very careful. But given what we have seen, I don't know what will happen on that crazy train. It is the unpredictable, I have trouble saying this word. It's the unpredictability that makes me concerned. And also the second reason that makes me concerned is the fact that Western military experts or political experts have not considered this situation as a factor in determining. I mean, every evaluation, every assessment, or every expert opinion that you see is based on how the West would I mean, everything is based on the fact that Xi Jinping has like full control, like he can decide whatever he wants. But no, that's not the situation, So that's what I say. The balloon incident will be a big turning point in Sino-US relations and will directly impact the war against Taiwan. And that's what I meant. I think Western political and military experts have omitted this important factor in their assessment of the situation in China as well as in the Pacific. Of course, all we can do at this point is to keep an eye on the situation in China. But my gut feeling is that more incidents like that, like the balloons, will happen. It will be interesting to see how the West, particularly the United States, will react to that. Since this is a video about prediction, let's talk about the ancient prophecy from the Tang Dynasty. I want to mention it not because I follow prophecy. I think it's only because I think it's so interesting and it has been on the mind of a lot of Chinese people. So we need to discuss it. And those of you who don't believe in prophecy, it's okay. But I think you can appreciate it from a cultural perspective. It's just very fascinating. I have slides. Now I have slides. Okay, so let's oops, sorry, let me just maybe I could talk a little bit about the book is called 推背图. It was written during the Tang Dynasty. So the Tang Dynasty was a time when both Buddhists and Taoist practices flourished, and many government officials and literary figures, such as the Chinese poet Li Bai, they practiced them. For example, Li Chunfeng, a great historian who worked for Emperor Taizong, Tang Taizong, in his court, was a master of astrology. And he is one of the two authors of this prophecy book called 推背图. In English, it may be translated as pushing back diagrams. I'm not sure how you translate that, but it's, I think, the most famous prophecy book throughout the Chinese history. It has accurately predicted, for example, the Tiananmen Square massacre. The book has 60 diagrams that looks like this. Here you go. Yeah, it has a picture, and then it has like two poems, right, that describes the situation. And this particular diagram is number 43. And none of the other diagrams or prophecy. So each diagram like corresponds to like a major event or a prophecy. None of the other ones gave any time frame except this one. This gave the exact time frame, and that's why people are so concerned. And it's related to 2023 and Taiwan. So let's take a look at what's said in that. Let's first take a look at the pictures. Can you guys see? Okay, yeah. So in the picture, you see there are two people. There's an adult dressed like an official standing at the back left or the northwest. Next to him is a child standing in the southeast. Now the child's costume is more elaborate than the official, right? So he has like a ornate collar, has the ornate. I mean, basically the clothing, the costume the child is wearing is more elaborate and ornate. So indicating that he comes from a wealthier family or a high social ranking family. But he's not wearing a hat, whereas the official is wearing a hat. So meaning that the adult is an official, and the kid, although he has a high bearing, but it doesn't have any status, shall we say. Many people say that the big official, the adult, and then the child are metaphors of mainland China and Taiwan, because they're very similar in terms of orientation and size. So China is in the northwest, right? And Taiwan is in the southeast. And Taiwan is smaller than in size than mainland China. And also Taiwan is wealthier, is wealthier than mainland China. And then although, mainland China, the guy wears a hat, like is official, it's trying to make the kid not a real country, so the child does not wear a hat. And also, most interestingly, the adult is raising his right arm. So people say, it looks like he's going to hit the kid, right? He's going to like spank the kid. But the kid also raised his hand to sort of protect himself. So I think I have a better picture. Because this is the original painting, and I think their expression is not. Some people like kind of did another rendering of the picture, and looks like the vicious adult is trying to hit the kid, and then the kid is just raising his right arm, protecting himself. So first of all, the picture is very telling. And then now let me tell you what the poems say. So the poem, the first part, it says, the ruler is not like the ruler, or the king is not like the king, and the minister is not like the minister. The beginning was difficult and dangerous, but everything will be overcome in the end and settled down. So, and that people think about Taiwan and mainland China, right? The ruler is not like the ruler, the minister is not like the minister. Here minister is like, that's kind of summarizes the China-Taiwan relations. And the beginning was difficult, but everything will be resolved, like everything will come to an end. The next poem, that's when the timing was given. The black rabbit walks into the cave of the green dragon. What happens next cannot be told. And then, okay, so the black rabbit, this year is the black rabbit year, because it's the water rabbit. You know how the 5 elements, you have 5: water, wood, metal, fire, and earth, right? The 5 elements. So the combination of the 5 elements with the 12 zodiacs, so you have 60 combination. So this year is the water rabbit year, and water in the 5 elements has the color black. So black rabbit is exactly now 2023, or the lunar year that we just entered, that we're in now. And then green dragon, green signifies wood in the 5 elements. So it would be wood dragon, and that's next year. So people are saying is the prophecy saying that somewhere between the Black Rabbit year and then the Green Dragon year, meaning between this lunar year and next lunar year, this minister ruler conflict will be settled? Because it gives a timing, right? Of course, it says what happens next cannot be told. It's like revealing too much secret. And then the next two say only the outer roots are on the tree, or the outer roots are attached to the tree. And in 30 years, the offspring will bear fruit. And many people interpret as, in mainland China, the traditional Chinese culture has been destroyed by the CCP, whereas it has been well preserved in Taiwan. Like, traditional Chinese culture is well preserved in Taiwan. So the outer roots, the roots signifies Chinese culture, or the authentic Chinese culture. So the outer roots are on the tree, are still attached to the tree. And then in 30 years, offspring will bear fruit. So people don't know what the 30-year means. But what got everyone talking about is the Black Rabbit walking into the cave of Green Dragon. Is that the end? Oh, and the other thing that really is, I circled the word ding, and this is the type of diagram or the type of prophecy that indicates it concerns the power of rulers. So there are different types of diagrams that tells different aspect of society, but this particular diagram or this particular prophecy is about the power of rulers. So again, people say, well, that's definitely about Xi Jinping and Taiwan. So let me come back. So now you see the prophecy that got people talking during the Lunar New Year, because people are asking, are we talking about the transition period when the year of the rabbit will end and when the dragon year will begin? So the dragon year will happen next, will be February the 10th of 2024. That's the first day of the dragon year. So people are saying, are we talking about somewhere between like next January, February, like the first quarter of 2024? That's when we will see like this conflict be settled. I don't have an answer, but I'm just telling you this prophecy that I think is very interesting, and because the picture definitely it matches with people's understanding of the situation between mainland China and Taiwan. So if you don't believe it, it's fine. Just take it as an interesting cultural anecdotes. Okay, all right, I'm done. Let me see. Do people have any questions for me? I'm gonna take off this earphone because it doesn't do me anything. Doesn't do anything. All right. Let me see. Do people have any questions for me? Let's see. 新年快乐, Happy New Year. All right. Well, a lot of questions. I have a super chat from Samuel Liu. Thank you. Let me see. From Digital Formosan. Why the U.S. sells arms to Taiwan but fails to deliver since the latest Bush administration? Why China doesn't want to conquer Kinmen and Matsu Island? Oh, I think China wants to conquer Kinmen and Matsu Island, definitely. And a lot of people say that may be the first two islands that it takes over before attacking the main Taiwan island. But it's a matter of time, right? The military, I think, is still going through COVID right now. So right now it's not the right time, but we don't know. Why the U.S. sells arms to Taiwan but fails to deliver since the latest Bush administration? What do you mean fails to deliver? I don't think the U.S. has sold that many. If you could elaborate your question, maybe I'll get back to you next time. But thank you for the question and the donation. From Patrick, thank you. All right. Venkat, thank you. All right. So Robert Granholm, what's the possibility of the overseas assets of Chinese officials being seized by the CCP? That's a good question. I think I think Xi Jinping has been investigating. Um, Part of his anti-corruption campaign is trying to find out how much assets, how much wealth these officials have been uh, hiding from him in overseas. I mean, I think the first thing is for him to quantify how much how much it is and where they are. The next thing is how to for him to take it, right? Um, Thank you. I think he wants to take I think he wants to take them, but would the West collaborate or cooperate with him? Let him take those money? I doubt it. But if yeah, so but these people still have a lot of assets in China as well. Yeah. Um, Thank you. Thank you. Um, from Freedom is for All. Could the CCP use mass sorry, it disappeared. The question disappeared on me. Where did it go? Oh, here it is. Use mass mobilization if they attack Taiwan and don't make fast progress. Uh, that would be a situation it does not want to see. I do not know enough to answer that question because I'm not a military strategist. Um, I think I'm more of a political analyst than a military analyst. I cannot answer that question. So, yeah. How could the CCP seize assets in another country? It's very tough. It wants to, but I really don't think it can. Um, um, Biden said he supports the one China position. Could this diagram foretell China becoming a constitutional democracy over 30 years starting in 2024? Um, Biden supports the one China, I think, policy, right? There's a difference between the US supports one China policy. What China has is one China principle. They're different. Policy is subject to be defined and interpretation, whereas principle cannot be changed. So the two sides never agreed on anything. As far as I'm concerned, they're different words, word choices. They agree on the same adjective, but not the noun. So, could this diagram foretell China's becoming a constitutional democracy? I think China will become a free society eventually. Um, but it may not be under the framework that Biden has prescribed. Um, yeah. All right. So over 30 years, I hope it does not take that long. I hope it does not take that long. Do you think Kim Jong Un trusts Xi Jinping? No, no, I don't think so. All the CC, I don't think Vladimir Putin trusts Xi Jinping. Yeah. Uh, and okay, we stand behind Taiwan. Yes, thank you. And the one China, whatever. The U.S. and China has been talking past each other since ancient times. Oh yeah, yeah. When do you think China will be free? My my gut feeling is um, my gut feeling is because the current situation is not sustainable. If you talk to everyone in China, whether it's government officials or it's ordinary citizen, nobody believe that the system is working for them, right? The government just recently announced that they're forcing the government officials to take an exam, and then and then they're changing their employment status to contractor. So contractor work could be seasonal, and then so that means that they will not get their full pay. So the CCP is running out of money. So and then the government official is a major expenditure item. They make a lot more money than other Chinese, and there are so many of them. So definitely the government is cutting that expense, but it's turning a lot of the grassroots officials away from them because these people are unhappy. And also there are other situations like people want to refinance their mortgage. People, because the interest rate has been lowered so much, people want to pay off part of their mortgage, do mortgage refinancing, and then the banks are making it almost impossible for them to do that. And then so people are saying paying back my mortgage is more difficult than taking out a mortgage. Can you imagine that? And the reason is if people, pay off their mortgage, the banks will lose money because they cannot make the interest, right? So the banks, they're mostly government owned or backed by the government. So they don't want to lose money. So they're passing all kinds of, arbitrary regulations to make it almost impossible for people to refinance their mortgage. And I mean, things like that can only happen in a closed society in China. So even people realize, with the money they have in the bank, which they aren't, they can't do much. They can't put it in stock. They don't want to invest anywhere. They just want to take the money out and pay off their mortgage so they can reduce the monthly payment. The government is not letting them do that because the banks will be losing money. Could you imagine that? What do you think Mrs. Ping, her husband, should do? Which Mrs. Ping? You mean Xi Jinping? Xi Jinping's wife from Robert? I'm not sure which Mrs. Ping you're talking about. I think if you're talking about Xi Jinping's wife, I think during the Hong Kong protest, there have been reports that she was very upset with the way her husband dealt with Hong Kong. And I think their daughter also, I mean, the mother and the daughter believing the freedom in Hong Kong. So they were very upset with the way Xi Jinping did to Hong Kong. And there were rumors that, they were very upset and she moved out. And so for a while, Xi Jinping ran solo, but, these are the rumors that you cannot verify. But she's generally liked by people and she's down to earth. But, yeah. So his political enemy is also watching everything she does or doesn't do. So it's very difficult for her to play any role in the CCP's politics. At one point, when the chained woman incident happened last year during the Chinese New Year, remember? And she attended one of the Politburo meetings, people say, because she's very upset. She wanted people to find out what really happened to that poor woman. And then that became kind of a political incident for Xi Jinping, and people saying that his wife, has the ambition to become Madame Mao. And then the next thing you see is she, didn't say anything. So I think it's very difficult. At this point, it's very difficult for his family to play any role publicly, and they can only do it privately. But even that, I don't know how much influence she has over him. All right. What happened to the chained woman? It's very sad. We don't know. We have not heard from her. She disappeared from the public. And there have been citizen journalists who went to her village trying to find her. They can't get near. Nobody knows if she's alive or what. She has disappeared from the public. Suggestion for a future episode. I thought I saw something about Hong Kong getting into crypto against Xi, desperation for Hong Kong government with CCP infighting. Okay, I have not followed that, but I'll keep that in mind. It's Saturday night. I've been talking for 15 minutes. I hope this information is helpful, and enjoy the rest of your weekend. I'll see you next week. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night. Thank you.